Hey, what's up guys? Alex here with a new video, and today we have another brand new Sigma lens. We're taking a look at the new 28 to 45 f1.8 zoom lens for the Leica L Mount. If you're new to the channel, I am a portrait photographer based out of San Antonio, Texas, and I've been using this lens for the last 3 weeks. A few things I have to say. First of all, Sigma is absolutely on fire. I just recently reviewed their 24 to 70 f2.8 version 2, and before that their 50mm f1.2, and this is their third lens in the last 3 months that they release, and they've all been absolutely incredible. This one is actually a game changer because it is the fastest zoom lens in the market. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you remember, but about 10 years ago, about 10 years ago, one of the most popular YouTube lenses was the Sigma 18 to 35 f1.8 lens for APS-C bodies. I think at that time, every YouTuber was using it because of the versatility and that f1.8 constant aperture. Well, this lens is the full frame version of it with 28 to 45. It's a little bit less tight, but you have that versatility and you have that constant f1.8 aperture. The crazy thing about it is it's a large lens, size of my face, but it's not really heavy and it's not as big as I expected it to be. I personally don't really think this is really aimed at photographers. A lot of the features of this lens are really video focused and really impressive things that we'll cover here in a second, but as a photographer, I did test this lens for photography. I did take this lens on multiple sessions, and I want to share my experiences. So these are my first impressions, definitely not a review. I've only used this lens for about 3 weeks. Like I do with all my videos, I'll be providing image samples for you to check out. And with that said, let's kick things off. Let's go into the design and build quality. So when you look at this lens, this is a Sigma lens. You have a aperture ring that's declickable. You have 2 customizable buttons, an autofocus manual focus switch. The lens is made out of metal and plastic. It feels great in the hands. It's a weather-resistant design, and you have an 82mm filter thread, which is quite small for the fact that this is an f1.8 zoom lens. I think the Canon 28 to 70 uses a 95mm filter thread. Now, bigger focal length, but that lens is just chunky. This lens, like I mentioned, is a little bit bigger than a 24 to 70 and a little heavier. This is totally a lens you can pack and take with most places. Now, I mentioned this lens might be aimed at videographers, and that's because of a few things. First of all, Sigma is advertising and saying that they've designed this lens to have minimal focus breathing. I didn't really test that because all the video I usually do is talking head, but I'm gonna trust what Sigma is saying. And they also designed this lens to have a constant focusing distance or as close as 30 centimeters, which means you can focus as close as 30 centimeters throughout the entire range. That is pretty cool, which means you can zoom in and zoom out, keep a lens on a tripod, and the focusing distance doesn't have to change. That's a really cool feature. And when you look at optical performance, Sigma is saying at 28mm wide open, this lens performs better than their 24mm f1.4 prime lens. They're also saying that at 45mm, this lens performs better than their 50mm f1.4 prime lens. Those are some bold claims, and of course I had to test it. But before I get to image quality, I also have to mention that this lens does have Sigma's newest HLA autofocusing motors, which means it's gonna focus pretty fast. I tested this lens with a Leica SL3, and I had 0 issues, and for the most part, I nailed focus almost every single shot. But when we get to image quality, 28 to 45 is an interesting focal length because for me, usually when I have a camera system, I have 3 prime lenses. I usually have a 24, a 35, and a 50. This lens is not a 24. It is a 35, and it's not a 50. So when you look at the focal range, this lens isn't really a lens I would normally shoot with because it doesn't necessarily fit my wide or my portrait length. I did take this lens on multiple sessions, and I did challenge myself to test this lens throughout the entire zoom range. Now, before we even get any further, I do want to say this, because I know there's been a lot of controversy on these types of reviews and first impressions, and can you trust YouTubers? And I gotta say this, I am including images for you to download and check out, because I want you to see what I'm seeing. And if you see something else, let me know in the comments below. I think the second thing, I took this lens on 3 paid sessions, which means I tested this lens with paying customers. I didn't test this lens to shoot test charts or to shoot personal work. I used it on the field with real work. The images you're seeing and you can download, I delivered to paying customers. So if that doesn't tell you that I actually tested this lens and I'm putting my money where my mouth is, I don't know what else does. But when you look at image quality, this lens is a banger. This lens is sharp throughout the entire range. I was not left wanting any more. As a matter of fact, I was actually pretty impressed at the flare resistance and how this lens handled bright situations. I didn't really see any flaring. It maintained contrast, and overall, it's a great lens. I said this in the beginning of the video and I'll say it again. Optically, Sigma's producing some of the best lenses. And for my SL3, as a matter of fact, 90% of my lenses are Sigma lenses because they're so freaking good. This is a 61 megapixel sensor and it's resolving all those megapixels, and you won't be disappointed with the image quality. But who is this lens really for? I think this lens is really aimed at videographers for multiple reasons. One, you have a constant f1.8 aperture with a 28 to 45 millimeter focal length, which means if you're using this lens on a gimbal, you don't really have to rebalance the gimbal too much because it's an internal zoom lens and the weight doesn't change that much. As a matter of fact, the weight doesn't change at all. So you can use it on a gimbal. I think also the fact that they designed this lens to have minimal focusing breathing tells me they designed it with videographers in mind. And then when you look at the focal range, I think 28 to 45 isn't necessarily a very popular photography range, but when you look at video, it's a little different. You get that flexibility, but also with most video cameras or most video settings, you can also switch to crop mode, which means not only do you get 28 to 45, you can essentially go to Super 35 and now get 2 different focal lengths. I think 28 would be closer to a 37 millimeter and 45 maybe closer to a 60 millimeter. So you can get 2 different ranges when doing video by going to crop mode or full frame mode. This lens, I think the craziest part about it is the price point. So when you think about world's fastest zoom lens and you look at the competition, there really isn't much. You have the Canon 28 to 70 f2. That lens is $3,000, I think. So when I got this lens to test out a few weeks ago, I was expecting it to be in the $2,000 range because of its unique positioning in the segment. But this lens, when it launches, will retail for $1,349. How? Anyways, at that price point, I think if you're a videographer and you're looking for a zoom lens that's bright and flexible, this is definitely your choice. There really isn't anything else on the market like this right now, and I'm glad to see Sigma pushing the boundaries of optical design and innovating with cool lenses like this one. And the best part is making it affordable so people can actually purchase it. At $1349, not only do you have a unique lens, a great lens, you have an affordable lens. So I love to see what Sigma's doing here. As always, guys, let me know your thoughts below. Like I mentioned, and I'll say it again, download the images, check out the image quality yourself. Let me know down in the comments what you think. And if you're a photographer, do you plan on checking this lens out? If you're a videographer, does this lens interest you? The full frame version of the popular 18 to 35 APS-C? Let me know down in the comments below. As always, smash that like button, subscribe, and I will see you on the next one. Have a good one, guys. Peace.